All right, welcome back, everyone. More now from my interview with Ivanka Trump. I got the chance to talk to her about the contrast between the Trump administration's approach to the economy and the Democrats with their Green New Deal and threats of socialism. And we're going to talk about it with my guests here right after this. Take a look.
We created this outside advisory board that's really going to do a couple of things. The first is to help us create awareness around the multiple pathways. Education, it's not higher education or technical education or trade education, it's education. It's education with the goal of the result being an ability to provide for yourself. So having some of these leaders talk about education in different terms, big American companies.
But also small, I mean, it's interesting because Linda McMahon was part of this conversation and emphasizing the role of small business and all this. And altogether, what it really tells you is that you've got this very distinctive, very kind of pro-enterprise, pro-private sector way of thinking about this. That is a huge contrast with something that's getting a lot of attention, which is, of course, the Green New Deal, which superficially is all about the environment. But within it, you've got an approach to jobs, which is very radically different, which is a government-guaranteed, well-paying job for everyone. That's the promise in the Green New Deal. What do you think of that?
We want to unleash innovation. We want America to be the best place for entrepreneurs, for companies to open and run their businesses. And that will create jobs. That will create investment and productivity, which we had grossly fallen behind on making capital investments that would enable our businesses to compete and thrive. So we want to create a climate where people want to do business in America, and we are creating that climate. And as a result, we have more people working today than any time in the history of this country. I mean, think about that fact in and of itself. It's unbelievable. And another thing that's so amazing when you talk about work and workforce participation rates, last quarter, 73% of the people who came into the workforce came in off the sidelines. They weren't even considered unemployed. They came in completely off the sidelines. They had been outside of the labor force. That is the largest number in the history of keeping this metric, so for decades where that's been true. So these policies are working, and they're working for the people whose jobs were the most vulnerable. And those are the people we're trying to help. We're also trying to help them through our working family agenda by recognizing the realities of modern working families, the enormous cost of childcare for those families, and the necessity of childcare to families who need two incomes, or of course for single parents. And then of course the importance for children of childcare, early childhood education, because they're really one and the same.
Yes, I totally agree with that. But I just want, you've got people who will see that offer from the Democrats, from the progressive Democrats, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Here's the Green New Deal, here's a guarantee of a job. And think, yeah, that's what I want, that's simple. What do you say to those people?
I don't think most Americans in their heart want to be given something. I've spent a lot of time traveling around this country over the last 4 years. People want to work for what they get. So I think this idea of a guaranteed minimum is not something most people want. They want the ability to be able to secure a job. They want the ability to live in a country where there's the potential for upward mobility. And the reality is that too many Americans felt that there wasn't the chance to do better or to live a better life than their parents. And that's something that was new. That's something that had just started in the past decade, where there wasn't a sense that you could achieve the American dream and you could be more successful than the generation that came before you. That's starting to change. That's starting to change because there is opportunity, because there is investment. And government intervention, targeted, smart intervention that delivers the right outcomes, which is maintaining workforce attachment and providing people with the ability to work through assisting them with family-friendly policies like paid family leave that incentivizes family cohesion and also workforce attachment. That's good government intervention. But free market capitalism is what's made this country successful.
Not socialism.
Not socialism, no.
And you think that's good? Last quick question. Looking ahead, your father's gearing up for 2020. How's this all going to play out? The argument, you put it very clearly, free market capitalism versus the socialist guaranteed job alternative. How's that going to play out?
Well, I think fundamentally, if you ask yourself the question, are we better today than we were yesterday or we were 2 years ago? The answer is undoubtedly yes. So as an American family is sitting down and they're thinking about their financial situation relative to a month ago, a year ago, America is doing very well, and it stands in quite sharp contrast to the rest of the world. So not only are we doing well, much of the world has slowed down in terms of the pace of their growth, and our policies are continuing to allow this economy to thrive. So I think when you think about the foreign policy agenda, when you think about the interest in domestic security, and then you think about our economic agenda, Americans are better off today than they were in the past, and I think that's deeply meaningful to all of us. That's what we want. That's what we want in a leader, and the president's proven his ability to execute on that mission.
Ivanka Trump, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.